Welcome to the Pirate Broadcast, where we interview interesting people doing interesting things, where you can expand your connections, your community. Kindness is cool and smiles are free. And let's get this party started. And Brian is being here. He's here. He's going to be a pirate today. We got a great show happening. And thank you so much for being here. And Brian, good morning.
Good morning, my friend. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be with you. And thanks for building the platform to put good into the world, brother.
You know, my everyday chore is to get up here and create some smiles, share some inspiration, and motivate people to do something better today. Make it matter.
I love it.
You know, one of the things that we connected kind of randomly through another pirate, and all of a sudden this thing about podcasting, and we have some history about podcasting and putting these things together. And I want to go back for those that don't know you, just happen to be the 5 people in the world that watch this show that don't know you. Tell us about Brian and what you're doing and who you are and why you got there.
Yeah,
just give us a snapshot.
I will. So first and foremost, I'm a husband and father. I have to start there because that's the most important role in my life. So I say that. And then to give a little bit of history, because I think to answer that question, it's better to tell a quick story because you can really understand why it's such a perfect fit for me to be a pirate, especially today. So I want everybody, unless they're driving, to just close their eyes for 1 second. And I'll tell you when to reopen them. I want you to imagine going to a store, having a successful shopping trip, leaving the store, heading to your car, ready to go on with your day. And as you're walking to your car, you turn your head and see a truck barreling 40 miles an hour right at you with no time to react. Go ahead and open your eyes. That's where this portion of my story begins. My mom, my brother, and I went to our local Walmart to get a 1-inch paintbrush. And as we were headed back to the car, anybody who knows me or has spent any time or consumed any of my content knows I've got a ton of energy. Of course, I was the first one to the car, and I was ready to get home and put that 1-inch paintbrush to use. This was back in the days, though, where we didn't have key fobs, and I needed to wait for my mom to physically get up to the door, put the key in, and turn it so I could get in. So she and my brother were 3-4 feet behind me. While I was waiting, a truck pulls up in front of the store, and the driver and middle passenger get out. Passenger all the way to the right feels the truck moving backwards. So he did what any one of us would do, Russ, and he scoots over to put his foot on the brake, but he instead hits the gas. Combination of shock and force threw him up onto the steering wheel, up onto the dashboard, and before you know it, he's catapulting 40 miles an hour across the parking lot right at us with no time to react. So we're in an end spot, and he goes up and over the median, goes up and over the tree in the median, hits our car, knocks me over, runs over me diagonally, tears my spleen, leaves a tire track scar on my stomach, and continues on to completely sever my left arm from my body.
Well,
so there I am laying on the parking lot on a 115-degree day in Arizona, right? My mom and brother watch the whole thing happen, and they see my arm now 10 feet away. Fortunately for me, so did my guardian angel. She walks out of the store right when this happened, and it was a nurse. She saw the literal life and limb scenario in front of her and rushed immediately into action. She came over, put her hands on the wound, stopped the bleeding, and instructed some innocent bystanders to go inside, grab a cooler, fill it with ice, and get my arm on ice within minutes. Had she not done one or both of those things, I either wouldn't be here with you today, or I'd be here with you today with a cleaned up stump. Yeah. And so what got me on this path, there's really 2 primary lessons that I took from life that I've applied to everything. There's many, many more, as I'm sure you can imagine, with all of the adversity that happened. But what I realized is I have a very unique story, right? And so what's important is that we pause and become aware of the lessons we can extract from our stories, and then become intentional with how do we apply them in our lives. And we all have the ability to do that because we all have stories, and we all have things we can learn from them. We also all have the ability to tap into the collective wisdom of other people's stories to shorten our own curve to learning. So these 2 lessons, the first is I learned not to get stuck by what had happened to me, but instead get moved by what I could do with it. And the second I didn't realize until far later. At 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I'm going through the process, right? I'm having surgeries and years of therapy and recovery. Yes, I was a part of it, but I was also being guided through the process. So I was kind of in a fog. My parents were not, however. You see, the idea of seeing their son grow up without the use of his left arm was a source of great suffering, and they were intimately aware of the unceasing medical treatments and years of therapy. But they ultimately did what they needed to do on a daily basis to embrace the pain to ultimately strengthen and heal me. So they ingrained in me this philosophy and way of living, which is one of my statements that I just live my life by, which is to embrace pain, to avoid suffering. And I think that's also where we gain freedom. It's this concept that I use to not only overcome the unique injury, but how my business partners and I scaled our last business to 15 million within the span of a decade. And now how I flipped that on its head as a human behavior and performance coach to help individuals and organizations just like you, just like the people listening, become more aware, more intentional, and who they already are, their most authentic selves. You see, I believe that's when magic happens and the door starts to crack to perspective, motivation, and direction. And that's when we can bring joy, freedom, and fulfillment back into our lives. And that's why I've committed my life for the next 25 years to trying to impact 1 billion lives. Because if we reduce the level of suffering on this planet, we bring joy, freedom, and fulfillment back in. That's also where the bonds of human connection start to be repaired. And we can have a lot more beautiful world that we live in.
Such a true statement. Absolutely, positively. And we have a lot of parallels. You know, my whole life changed when I was falling 33 stories from a billboard, and 8-year-old kid across the street says, "Look, Mom, that guy's jumped off the sign."
Yeah.
You know, 2 years of rehab and reconstruction, and you know, nearly losing my arm. It was the same situation. You know, and you either have to choose to be a victim or victorious over the situation.
That's right.
Pull what you can from the circumstance you're delivered and move toward a much greater goal of sharing, caring, and providing some empathy in the world. You know, that's why kindness is cool and smiles are free is not an empty statement. It's not a marketing statement. It's a way of life for me. And because you don't know what someone next door is going through. You don't know the person in the grocery store that is coming out there that could be in a drastic circumstance tomorrow. And so anyone that you meet, anyone that you talk to, random strangers, individuals that you have no understanding of, have a little kindness, have a little empathy, because, you know, it makes a difference. It does make a difference.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, perspective is everything, right? Perspective points us to what's important. So if we seek the perspective of others, we try to put ourselves in their shoes. It's easier to have empathy and wrap them with that.
So when I want to shift gears a little bit, and because of our shared experience in you know, going through the pain and suffering of circumstance and something outside of our control, it propelled us to a different location. It propelled us to be a different way. So for yourself, you became a performance coach. You know, you built companies, you built, you know, great things. And now you're building a different thing, you know, impacting millions of lives. So in that journey, what do you feel is going to be the thing, the thread, the common thread that pulls it all together in performance, from the perspective of performance? What is it that people can say, I can do this, or motivating to make a change in their lives, to adjust their sales and go a different direction? Some of these little tweaks that we think about or become aware of are, in my journey anyway, it's like, oh, I get it. The light bulb goes off and all of a sudden things open up and it becomes much easier to provide and deliver services or work through a challenge I'm going through. How do you perceive that as being current and, you know, active today? And you know, how do people get unstuck, I guess, is the way I'm asking the question.
Yeah. So, you know, it starts with human behavior and performance coach, right? So you said a second ago, I'm a performance coach. I think it's human behavior first, because you can't perform until you understand the human behavior. And so I think one of the most common threads that keeps people stuck, right? Most people think it's the wrong strategy or the wrong tactics. So if I change my strategy and tactics, I can get to a different place, right? If my business is stagnant, let's change our strategy. Let's change our tactics. Let's go. And by the way, strategy and tactics are critically important, but that's not typically what keeps people stuck, right? Because strategy and tactics can refine, they can change, they're much easier. What often keeps people stuck is a combination of emotional triggers and behavioral patterns that keep them in that self-defeating place. And almost without question, in the one-to-one work that I do, or even in our group courses that we work with, where we actually help develop individuals, more times than not, the piece that's actually keeping them stuck is a combination of one of those two things, emotional triggers and behavioral patterns, right? So often I can be working with high performers who have reached a high level of success, at least how the external world has defined it financially, right? But they're miserable. They're an empty shell of themselves, and they're not really recognizing why they keep repeating the same patterns in their lives, why relationships or health are not fulfilled, or why they can build a business, but they can't necessarily take it to the next level, right? And so often it's them that are in the way. And so, I've got a 68-year-old client that I work with right now. He's built successful businesses. He's been unbelievably successful in his life. He's a consultant and a coach himself. He's had multiple coaches. In 2 sessions of working with him, we uncovered that he has a very deeply rooted self-worth issue that he was never aware of, that impacted his relationships with his family, his spouse. It impacted his ability to monetize his business. It impacted the way that they actually were going about and pricing their fee structure for their clients. It impacted the way that he interacted with his business partner. It wasn't strategy and tactics. 68 years old, he was blind to the fact that he's been dealing with self-worth on such a deep level that it's impacted so many elements of his life, right? And I could give you 50 more examples of that, but it's emotional triggers and behavioral patterns. And what we're unaware of, we can't be intentional about. So what I loved about what you said, but most in the question that you asked, is how do we become aware of what these things are? Our minds process 11 million bits of information per second, but we're only consciously aware of about 40.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. Like, let that sink in. 11
That's
million
insanity
bits.
when you think about it out loud, logically.
Yeah, because what does it tell you? It tells you that we're largely led by the unconscious. So until we go through a systematic process of moving the unconscious to the conscious, the unaware to the aware, it's going to feel like life is happening to us. It's going to feel like it's fate. It's going to feel like we have no influence or control over our destiny.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where people get stuck, because they get into that victim mentality where it's like, well, I can't do anything different. No. We all have the ability to take back control of our lives.
Well, and take responsibility for our lives.
Ownership and responsibility. You're right.
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of things, and I have done a lot of work, and I'm really in a place right now where I'm focusing on growth and helping more people. And the more people I help, the better my life seems to,
I believe that.
Kind of repair. It just appears to be a much smoother journey. And thinking about some of the things you just said, it makes a lot of sense that if you add value and you create value and you push it out to the world, it seems to just come around and come back to you. Just like the nurse in the parking lot, knowing what to do at the right time. Yep. And there's been so many circumstances in my life that 2 seconds, one way or the other, I easily could have not been here.
That's
and
right.
So I know I'm on a mission to do something more than what I'm doing right now and growing into that journey. And one of the things that I love about what you're doing is helping people become a better person tomorrow than they were yesterday.
Yep. I mean, that's what it's about, man. I mean, there is no final destination, right? Like, it's a constant evolution of self. So if people can kind of remove the fact that it's like, if I just get here, then, right? Yeah. It's a constant evolution, but you have to go intrinsic before you can have extrinsic value and impact, right? So what I love about what you just said, I have a filter that I run almost everything through at this point in my life, right? It's relationships, values, and impact. So is anything that I'm going to do help build or establish a relationship, or maybe find a new one? Is there going to be a way for me to add value in some capacity? And where and how does this impact lives as a result of what we might do together? You've heard me say it before. A big word that I would say that I coined probably a year ago was this idea of collective impact, right? Like, we are stronger together than we are apart. And so, something that you've jumped into, that's even the last thing that we focus on is collective impact, right? When we bring like-minded individuals. The other thing that I love that you said, and I want to give one pivot because this is the evolution where I'm at this point. My wife and I have said for years, 15, 20 years, she and I have been aligned on this idea that, like, we give until it hurts, right? We give until the point that we feel it, because that for us is when it becomes significant. Now, that's true. And the more we've given, the more we actually have been in a position to receive. And I don't ever have a direct line to anything, right? There's dotted lines to a whole bunch of stuff where it's like, oh yeah, we did this one thing that impacted a life, and maybe it came back full circle. One of my coaches and mentors slapped me between the eyeballs with a 2x4 about 3 months ago, right? Because one of the things that I'm bad at, and I'm going to admit it, is I give a lot. I have a very hard time asking.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said to me is, Brian, like, you want to impact 1 billion lives, right? And I'll just break down for you. One of the things that I've said is, I don't have any problem asking as long as it benefits somebody else.
Yeah.
But one of my own shame triggers means that if I think that something's going to benefit me and only me, I hesitate to ask, because why would I ask if it's only going to benefit me, if it's not for the greater good? And what
Does he tried to get selfish to you? Is selfish one of the labels that you could place on that?
Oh, of course. But for me, it's tied to my shame trigger, right?
Yeah.
So selfish is the byproduct of that. For me, the deep-rooted emotional trigger is shame. And so what he said to me is, he's like, Brian, here's the thing. Impacting 1 billion lives, everything that you do, the way that you live your life, like it doesn't matter. If it directly impacts you, it's going to inherently impact other people because that's just how you operate. Because you give until it hurts. So he's like, we got to flip that on its paradigm as well, because you've got to put yourself in a position to receive at a level that's greater than you can give. Otherwise, you won't be able to give all of yourself to the level that you want to impact 1 billion lives. Yeah, so that was a paradigm shift for me that I'm working on actively.
Yeah. Well, I think having a ritual of improvement every day is something that everyone should adopt. You know, I love to create something every day. I love to help someone every day, and I like to inspire somebody every day. And those things, those active actions, and taking a conscious effort to do something, even if you don't know where it's going to land or where it's going to impact somebody, is important for the process. Because 100%. You know, once you start the flywheel of that giving, you also have to receive. You have to learn how to receive in order to accomplish a bigger goal, because you have to add to the flywheel. You have to keep that motion in action and following through. I want to give a shout out to some of the individuals that have joined us this morning. Safond has joined us. Thank you so much. And Jenny Gold, Pirates, Russ and Brian. Good morning, Jenny. Thank you so much for being here. And Darren Birch, a local resident. Great message. It's 5% of what happens to you and 95% how you deal with it. Absolutely, 100%. Perspective is everything. Mike Baker says denial. He also says self-esteem, self-worth. The Queen of Green, Lori Scott, says, good morning, Pirates. Well said, Brian. You got a fan here. Mike Baker. Yes, responsibility, accountability, maturity. And Darren Burke says, good morning, Pirates. So we have Jenny Gold says, Russ, you inspire me every day. Thank you, Jenny. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I want to kind of shift gears on, you're doing a lot of great things. And one of the things that I think is amazing right now is building a community of podcasters that are sharing the voice, inspiration, motivation from Winject Studios. And some of the activities around that subject is, I think, part of your journey and part of your process of impacting 1 billion lives. Is that a fair statement?
It's absolutely a fair statement. It's completely in alignment with who I am, the way that I operate, and how we'll do it. So, we'll talk a little bit about how this developed and then where we're at today. Because and you fortunately are someone who jumped up and said, hey, with my experience in podcasting, I think I could be one of the first 50 members to join and add value into this. And you have already. To my own detriment, I completely devalued podcasting prior. And for no reason. I mean, I literally, it wasn't for any reason. It wasn't like I did it and had a bad experience. I didn't understand it. I wasn't a part of the world. And COVID kind of forced a shift when I had a number of live stages get canceled and a lot of different things that happened where I was like, okay, well, what are some virtual stages? And oh, by the way, the timing of when I actually committed myself 100% to this journey of impacting 1 billion lives was also around the time that COVID was developing. So it wasn't like I had been on this path that I completely, just threw out the window. Yeah. But I started to double down on that approach. And I targeted about 10 to 12 and got on those shows. And they were like amazing conversations. And I started having like these unbelievable deep conversations with some of the most interesting people that I'd ever met. And it started to create this momentum that really blew up to the point that over the last 6 months, I've been on 150 shows and have met literally some of the most incredible people on the planet. 3 of which we decided to go into forming a community and building a network that's behind the community as a result of that. Yeah. 2 of them were guys that have been running podcast masterminds for the last 5-6 years, have really helped a lot of podcasters understand audience growth and connection and monetization. Yeah. Another one is a serial entrepreneur like myself, and his own show has had over 2 million downloads last year. And so it was like an incredible way because he understands how to control content, where to distribute it, how to actually grow people. And when we all got together, this idea was like, look, what doesn't exist in the world right now is a podcast community. There's lots of networks. There's lots of Facebook groups. There, support groups, if you will, for podcasters. podcasters, because podcasting
Why
can be
don't I get listeners?
right. I mean, like legitimately, like it's like these support groups, and we're like, okay, there's got to be more to it than this, because yes, there's always a business component, but there's also a community component that really is about where and how are we impacting lives. And again, to my idea of collective impact, where and how do we bring people together to do that on a more effective front? So we decided we're going to create a community for podcasters to come together to focus on those three things: community, collaboration, and collective impact.
Yeah.
And, you know, in a whisper, right, we had 50 shows join within a week. We've got, you know, well over 100 already on the wait list. We're getting ready to open up phase 2. But the whole point is bring together really solid people with really solid messages, give them opportunities to talk with each other, do show swaps, do guest introductions, figure out ways to leverage the systems and technology. And then through Winject, after we build the community, we're also plugging a network in on the back end. Community has to be first. So there is now and will always be a free option in the community, because that's the only way we get people together. Yeah. And then there's going to be ways that we can teach people, and there's going to be ways that we can do things for people. So yes, there's monetization elements to it, but that's not the goal. The goal is if we bring people together and we can plug in their message, that directly has collective impact. If we can elevate shows to a point where someone like yourself or a number of the individuals that are in the founder shows, a number of them who already have solid platforms with religious followers, what if we bring us all together? And we can find a way to live stream both on video and on radio to a point where we literally can blow up messages in a big way and change the world together. So this is all aligned with collective impact. This is just another vehicle for me to kind of move forward in my belief system. And the beautiful part about this, it's not my message. It doesn't have to be. It's about bringing people together and letting their messages, their stories, their lessons, their connections impact the world.
One of the things that I love about the community aspect of it is, and I've built communities in the past and, you know, taught a lot of people on technology and subjects and different things like that. The Pirate Broadcast and the Pirate Syndicate, which is one of the ventures that I have going on, is building somebody that can actually be seen, be heard, and be talked about, has such a huge impact. And I think a lot of people, when they get into podcasting or they get into live streaming or they get into content creation, they get discouraged very quickly because they don't see any immediate result. You know, it's not like Prime delivers, you know, your audience tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's like, where's my, you know, nobody listens to my podcast. And it takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy. And so you have to go in with the right mindset. You have to go into it with the right intent. And I think when you go to deliver quality content and you are focused on helping so many more people than yourself, and it's not a selfish, you know, you're not doing it for a strict marketing play, I think there's a lot more value that is created in the world. And it has a tendency to return back, and people notice, and it's real and it's authentic, and, you know, that kind of gets an overused word, but being authentic in what you're doing and doing it for yourself first, as far as your program and your routine and everything that goes along with that, and having help. I think having help and having a community around you is such a powerful tool. And because when you get down, it's nice to be able to call up and say, Brian, I'm having a kind of a down day. Can you say something nice to me?
That's exactly right. And the thing is like, especially in the content game and in the podcast game, it can be a lonely game. Yeah. It really can. Right. And people can get isolated to be solopreneurs, for lack of a better term, and their conversations and connection end up being through the show, which is great because you meet phenomenal people. But again, when you hit a wall or you get stuck or you're having a bad day and you need someone to be there to pick you up, having people around you who have relevance and credibility to understand what you're experiencing and the way that you're doing it is important. And again, I love what you said as well, because it has to connect to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, like, if there's impact on the back end, that's how I measure almost everything, is impact. What's the amount of impact we're going to have? Again, impacting 1 billion lives is a crazy audacious number, which is also why the filter that I run things through is something that I'm going to do today impact a life. I don't care if it's 1 life or 100 lives or 1,000 lives. Will it have impact? If it's going to have impact, that's fuel for me to continue to go. I mean, I've been creating content for a number of years, and you're exactly right. there's a slow trickle to it. But you start to build it into your routine. You start to build it into the world, and then you wrap yourself with like-minded individuals that can help you amplify that impact. That's what it's all about, brother.
Yeah, and it's so amazing to watch it grow. It's when's the best time to plant a tree?
Now.
Yeah. Now you got to nurture that. You're not going to see the fruits of your labor for a while. You let it grow, let it flourish, find the voice, find out who's actually paying attention. And because sometimes you put content out and it's not necessarily landing exactly where you imagined it would land. You have to craft that and nurture that and grow that. And so there's so many elements that having a community around to give you some feedback, say, hey, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. Here's some things that you can learn. Here's some things that you can do to improve. So I don't know if you know Darren or not. Darren Love, Badge Boys is about building bridges between community and police. He's here in Phoenix. I mean, he has a show. It would be a great connection. He's a pirate, so you guys should probably connect.
I'd love to.
And he asked the question, did you and your family stay in contact with the nurse? Thank you for sharing.
Darren, so I just got chills when you asked that question, because literally for the last 2 months, I have been on an active search to find her. The answer is no, we did not stay in touch, and she did not want any credit or recognition for her efforts. We do think we've got a way to get there. But again, this is one of the other beautiful things about content and putting stuff out into the world. I am on a mission to find her. And so, Darren, if you know anybody, you can put out some good in the world. I'd love to be able to connect with her and thank her, because 30 years later, right, I'd love for her to be able to see, like, look, she's having an impact in the world through the singular action she took that day. And that's a big motivation for me. Is I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. That's not lost on me. And I've never had the chance to tell her how grateful I truly am. And how much fuel that gives me every single day to know that she could have looked away and walked away that day. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But she didn't. She turned into it. And that's a big part of my message on embracing pain too. Right. She had just been delayed, by the way, in the store like 15 minutes and had a headache because she was like trying to get on with her day. She had some places to be. And when she walked out of the store, she knew why she was delayed and she went immediately into action. Not everybody does that. She didn't have to do that. But I'm like eternally grateful and forever indebted to her for that choice. Yeah. And it's those kinds of things happen every single day. They do. And I don't think it's I don't think it's lost in the universe that you're here, you're now doing great work, you're helping a lot of people. How do you like for people to connect with you, Brian? Yeah, so there's multiple ways they can connect. I would say the question you asked, which is uniquely different than most people, is how do I like people to connect? Honestly, impacting 1 billion lives, I'm intimately aware that 99.999999999% will never pay me $1, right? And so it's really about eyeballs on content. So I would say that social is a great place. I'm at Bogert Brian on pretty much every single platform. Yeah. And if you see anything that resonates, like, comment, and share, because we all know how the algorithms work. Like, I love it. If there's people who want more than that, brianbogert.com is a great resource. It puts together a lot of our collection of our courses, our publications in Forbes and other places. It's kind of a common ground for everything. Yep. And then, through the lens of also wanting to help people, I've got a free resource for anybody listening. Go to nolimitsprelude.com. It's a succinct version of a lot of our coaching philosophies to help you ask those right questions to lead yourself on an intrinsic journey. And oh, by the way, that might be all you ever need from us, and that's okay. Take it and run. If there's more that we can help you with, there's contact information through all that you can engage on a deeper level, and we'd be happy to help. Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation. And I love the opportunity when I can get to know people at a deeper level. And I do this every single day, 5 days a week. The Pirate broadcast has been going, like 350 episodes now. And I've, been podcasting for a while. So I understand some of the challenges, some of the implications of being consistent, and some of the results and benefits of doing so. And I just appreciate you joining us today, Brian, and sharing your story and some of the things that we need to think about
as we go out through the world. And so much appreciation for you and everything that you're doing.
Man, I've got a lot of gratitude for you as well. And I told you this when we first met, right? It seemed serendipitous, but the reality of it is the universe brought us together for a reason. We're going to be running together for a while, fellow pirates, going out and having collective impact on the world. And I couldn't be more excited to be associated with you and be a part of your journey.
Fantastic. And everyone, as you know, like Brian said, we keep this machine rolling and we keep things moving forward because you like, comment, share the content with somebody that needs to hear it today, somebody that you can impact and inspire and generate that positive moment in their lives. I really appreciate the fact that you're here. I love you all. And thank you so much for being here, because kindness is cool. Smiles are free. And I want you to enjoy your day. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining the Pirate Broadcast. If you found this content valuable, please like, comment, and share it across your social media channels. I would love the opportunity to help others grow in their business. The Pirate Syndicate is a platform where you show up, we produce the show. It's that easy. If you want to be seen, be heard, and be talked about, join the Pirate Syndicate today.